Today we are going to talk about domestic violence, and we have four special guests. Let me introduce them here. Angie Guajardo, she is a survivor of domestic abuse. We have Teresa Gutierrez, she's a director of La Rosa Services. And we have Rob Arteaga, who is a psychotherapist. And then we have Lee Schindler. Did I pronounce that correct?
You got it.
Schindler, a facilitator and a victim support group. I'm assuming you're a victim as well.
Yes, sir.
Thank all of you for coming today. We're going to start off today by telling the audience what you all do first. Why don't we start off with yourself?
With the help of Teresa's helped me start up a men's group at La Rosa and just help to facilitate men. And we started out with 7 men and first group, and right now we're serving about 120 men a month.
120 men a month.
That's on average we get between 25 and 33 a week. So that's just it's just the beginning.
Yourself?
My name is Rob Arteaga. I'm a psychotherapist. I pretty much do my own private practice. And so I get to see a lot of couples, and I get to work with men sometimes that are in these abusive relationships trying to help themselves. So I think I have a pretty good perspective on what I can add to the topic today.
It should be interesting. Yourself?
I'm the director of La Rosa Family Services. It's a small agency that provides support groups and support for victims of domestic violence.
Angie?
And I am a business owner in the area. I do a lot of marketing and event planning, but at the same time I'm a motivational speaker. I go out and speak with women as a survivor myself, and go out and speak with them about my story, how it can be done, how you can break out of it and be an educated, successful Latina within the community. We do a lot of classes on dressing properly. We do a lot on getting them educated, getting them out, getting GEDs if needed, proper techniques, how they should behave, and just breaking out of the fear in general.
So tell us, Teresa, you've been working on this for a long time. As long as I've known you, you've been working with victims. Tell us a little bit about the history of La Rosa.
Well, La Rosa has been around for 15 years. It's always been a small group, but it's the very first agency that assisted Latinos, Hispanic women. As a matter of fact, the founder, Rosia Sanchez, she started with Houston Area Women's Center because they didn't have anyone that was able to give group in Spanish. So she started in her kitchen, in her garage, and then in her kitchen, and she would invite women from the neighborhood because she saw this abuse going on, and that's how La Rosa got started, and that's how she started helping women. And so I want to continue her legacy and continue helping women as much as possible.
So do you find that there's a lot more domestic abuse?
Oh, yes. I think that, as the Hispanic community grows, I don't think that we're not prepared. The infrastructure is not prepared. We don't have enough psychotherapists that speak Spanish. We don't have enough attorneys. We don't have enough child CPS caseworkers. We're just not prepared for the Hispanic, the boom in our population. We're just not prepared for that. And with all of the other social issues going on, it just causes so much pressure and tension in the families that causes so much violence. And if you notice, in the last 3 months, there has been a case every single weekend. There has been a case. And those are the ones that just get on the news. Those aren't even the ones that get reported.
Hey, that brings up a good point. Most Hispanic families don't talk about it.
Oh, it's still a taboo subject.
It's a taboo subject, that's correct. And today we have Angie, who's been through this. And why don't you tell us a little bit about your story?
Okay, well, I married very young. I married when I was 18, which it's very young, but you get married, when you get married in the Latino community, you marry forever. So you deal with it. I learned to deal with it. I married very young. I got pregnant very young, and I was married to this person for 7 years. During the time that I was married to him, he kept me under lock. We lived in an apartment, and basically the only time I was allowed to get out of the house, the apartment, was when I was with him. So he'd lock me in the morning, and I was through a deadbolt, and he'd lock me back. When he'd get in, that's when I was able to get out. One day, the maintenance man walked in to change a ceiling fan, and he didn't even know I lived there. He said, "I'm sorry, I didn't know you lived here." I said, "It's okay." So we built up, I guess for lack of better words, a friendship. And it was an older gentleman. He later on, immediately, we talked about my story. He didn't know I lived there. He didn't know what was going on. So he would take his lunch break early in the morning, 30 minutes in the morning, drive me to college so I can go to school, and then take the other 30 minutes in the afternoon, drive me back to the apartment, lock me back in, and keep my books in his storage room. So he never knew that I was going to school. I earned my bachelor's without my ex-husband finding out. I wasn't able to walk. I wasn't able to go to my graduation, but that was beside the point. So it was very abusive. There was a lot of alcohol abuse. There was a lot of drug abuse and a lot of gambling. So I was his punching bag. He made sure that whenever he had a bad night, it came home. So it was never a safe environment. It became, to me, safe was when I ended up at a shelter myself. That's when I said I can honestly feel that I was free for the first time in my life. I had nothing to my name, but I had never felt so free and so rich like I did that day.
So where was your family throughout this whole process? Did you even talk to your family?
No. Believe it or not, it could be happening to somebody else in this room and you wouldn't even know. I was seeing my family very sporadically. It wasn't very often, but I was seeing them. And to them, I was happy and everything was happy and everything was fine. They never knew what was going on. They never knew what I was going through. They never knew. So to me, when winter rolled around, it was perfect because I could hide bruises behind layers of clothes. And but they never knew. Later on, when I decided to leave when I went to the shelter for the first time, they didn't even know I went to a shelter. They found out until after I left the shelter that when I was able to get on my own 2 feet and with my kids, I finally decided to break through when I had my daughter. She was 2 months old, and I said, is this really the environment that I want for my daughter? Is this really what I want my son to grow up, seeing that this is okay? My son was 6 at the time. Is this the man that I want him to be? No, it's not. So I broke away from that. And even then, my family still didn't know for a couple months later what I was going through. So my parents didn't know, my brothers didn't know, nobody really knew. I had a little part-time job at the school when I was working, and they wanted me to stay after a certain amount of hours. I said, I can't, I don't have babysitting. But it was really that I had to get back in to be able to get locked back up and make it before he did.
Rob, you've seen many cases like this. Why don't you tell us a little bit about what's going on through her mindset when she's locked up and she refuses to tell her family?
What happens is that the man is the person that controls everything. And so I don't want to call it a strategy because it's not really a strategy, but the way they work is that they try and control as much as possible because they know whenever they can take something away, that's leverage they have against them leaving. So they control the finances. They control when you leave the house. They control what contact you have with outside people. And so the more control they have, the better for them because they know that they're not going to leave because they're in charge of everything of what's going on around them.
And that includes being in contact with family members.
Exactly.
So they completely tie them off. So that way there's no communication about what's going on in the household.
Exactly. And so my job, whenever I see them, they're usually in a pretty motivated to change because the woman has finally decided to leave. Now, it takes a whole lot to get the strength to do that, but that puts me in a good place to help them because I can tell them what you're doing is wrong. What you're doing is you got to forget about the guy that's controlling because that guy's not going to be the guy that's going to prosper in the relationship. And so my job is to give him tools to better help establish a healthy relationship than continuing the old ways.
So Lee brings an interesting perspective here. He's a male that was a victim as well. It's not very common that you hear about males coming forth and asking for help. Again, it's a taboo. We don't talk about it.
It's even a worse taboo being a man.
And so, Lee, why don't you tell us a little bit about your experience?
It's all the same. I mean, I listened to her, and the first thing that someone does is they take away your friends and family. That's the first. You know what I'm saying? I mean, it's all your social media is gone instantly. You're not allowed, Facebook. My situation is a little different because my abuser was an advocate. And that's how I knew Teresa. And that's how I knew a lot of people in the domestic violence industry. This was really tough for me, but that's how I met Sylvia. And it just came a day. I mean, I took a whipping, man. I mean, I lost my right eye. I mean, I've been burned with cigarettes. And My day job's a really tough job, and you'd never think, if you knew me during the day, that I went through this. But I know exactly what she's saying. I used to take classes here, the producer classes for Houston Media Source, and she would wait in the parking lot while I took the classes. I wasn't, you know, like the train caught me one time. I was 5 minutes late. I caught it for that. And you know, it's hard as a male because you have to go to work in a different perspective and portray yourself in a different way. And meeting Sylvia and Teresa, and Teresa really is the one that kind of shook the leaves off my tree to just bring things into another light. And the group's been a blockbuster. I mean, it's the biggest thing with domestic violence is to find your voice. We're accused to be abused. We're accused of cheating, lying. They'll accuse you of anything to be able to justify the abuse. And when you can build a voice, and like what I do with the group, our group's a little bit different. I base it kind of off an AA belief. You know, there's 2 million members in AA. You got to work together as a group. You know, if it's easier for 4 men to open up about an abuse as 4 men together as one-on-one. So that's a different spin we've taken with the men, is just try to get everybody to help open up and just get your voice and just be able to, you know, the biggest thing an abuser hates is to be pointed out. That's the biggest thing that anybody hates. So,
were there any signs that you saw from the very beginning of the relationship, or did it just kind of happen overnight?
I was a guy. I was in love, man. You know, I mean, honestly, that's just the honest spin on it. You know, for the first 6 months, everything was great, and then slowly but surely, the control came in. You know, didn't like a family member, didn't like a friend. You know, it's little by little. Why are you on Facebook? Are you talking to this person? So, you know, it's just a lot of the little things that crept in slowly, and in the end, it's the big impact. So,
do you see a lot of men that come to you regarding this issue?
No, I think that we've already touched on the point of how it's a big taboo subject. So I really I've never seen an abused man before. More of what I see is the men that are the abusers, that somehow the woman is trying to give them another chance. And so my job is to try and get them back and be better in the relationship.
We're going to take a short break. We'll be back in 2 minutes to talk about domestic violence in your home. Welcome back to Latino Talk TV. And we have another host with us who's running just a little bit late. Thank you for coming, Jose. Was it the train?
It was the train and the traffic. Sorry about that. I'm human.
Jose, thank you. I'm going to let you start off with the first question.
Well, thanks. That was a great topic today. And I heard something that's really special right now, that you have to find your voice. And I'd like to get some additional ideas on what that voice is, how does it start, what should it look like, because, I mean, that alone can really empower a lot of people watching the show. So what is your voice? Anyone, please.
You know, for myself, it took a while for me to be able to say, let me break away from this. When I finally made the decision, it was a hard decision because I knew I was going against my family, the beliefs that we grew up with, that you stay married forever no matter what. To be able to be a voice, I feel that you have to understand and surpass what you're going through yourself. I studied psychology for the same reason, because I wanted to understand me, I wanted to understand what I had gone through, and be able to say, I'm breaking away from this. But how can you help other people without getting to help yourself first? To me, that was very important, breaking away from it and saying, I need to help myself. I need to be able to be okay, not just for my family, but to help other women, other people that are in the same situation I was in. After I did that, after I educated myself and I got counseling and therapy, and you know, the shelter that I went through was great with me. Now I'm a go speaker, and I go teach some other classes to the ladies in the shelter. Now I can say I'm a voice. Now I'm not afraid to speak up of my situation. I'm not afraid to say this is what I went through. And if I was able to get past it, then you can too. If I was able to get an education with my situation, what's to say that you can't do it too? Now I'm a business owner. What's not to say that you can be an independent woman, successful Latina, or any race that you are? You can do it. Anybody can do it. But you have to have the help yourself before you can help others.
Let me remind our viewers, as you know, this is live TV. There's a phone number on the bottom of your screen. If you'd like to participate in the conversation, feel free to do so. Why don't you tell us a little bit about the stats? I know there's tons of people involved in this situation, but what are some real numbers?
Well, in 2011, Texas Council of Family Violence put out their their stats for number of deaths. There were 142 women killed in 2011. Harris County had the largest number of women killed, which was 32. Out of those 32, 6 of them were under the age of 20. 2 of them were over the age of 78. 3 of them were pregnant at the time that they were killed. And the statistics go on and on. And I'm really scared to see the numbers now for 2012 because, like I said, every weekend there has been a death, and there has been a death with children, and these women that say they're lost. I mean, all of a sudden, women missing. You know where it's going with that. It's either the husband or the boyfriend or an ex-boyfriend. There was a hostage situation that I heard on TV, and come to find out, just Tuesday at a Salvadorian restaurant, the ex-boyfriend held the waitress hostage. Now he went in there, and as he went in, he was getting after her and he was yelling at her. Nobody called the police when that happened. He held them hostage for 3 hours before he ended up shooting her in the chest and accidentally shot himself. But if someone in that restaurant would have called the police the minute he saw them arguing, then maybe that could have been prevented. But no one wanted to get involved. And this was I think it was in the afternoon, about 4 o'clock in the afternoon that this happened. And so, the numbers are growing, they continue to grow.
For some reason, what I've seen is that when the abuse happened is when the other person is the most vulnerable. That was the case with me. He was vulnerable, but I was more because he knew that I was so scared to leave that situation and not knowing what was going to happen. And I lost 4 pregnancies because of beatings. So when she said right now about pregnant women, to them, you're scared because now you're not just fearing your life, you're scaring your child's life. So, you become even more vulnerable, which makes them more powerful. Or they feel more powerful. They feel like they have more control because now you're scared for somebody else. I lost 4 pregnancies in between my children because of beatings, because of the situation that I was in.
So thank you for sharing your story, both of you. I mean, that takes so much to be able to openly discuss it. And I know that will help somebody. Are there stages of growth in the abuse pattern? I mean, like, what's usually the first stage? Like, there's stages of alcoholism. I mean, you're talking about the 12-step program. When you become a full-blown alcoholic, you don't become a full-blown alcoholic overnight. It's stages. It's the symptoms and the characteristics that we look at. Are those same styles of symptoms available, or that we can discuss, or people can start looking at? Like, this is the first stage of abuse, of control, and then it grows into that. What's been some of the history that you encountered?
Every little piece adds up. If I can control Teresa this much, I'm going to try to control her that much more. If I can slap Teresa, I can punch her. And that's how the abuse goes. I mean, it's just, I never thought I would have ended up where I ended up in the beginning over just little things. But then when the person can get away with it, it's just a free run for them. And that's a lot. You see in a lot of abusers that they just take that and run it till there's no more. And, that's a big part of keeping the voice out of you. I mean, the control is just overwhelming. I mean, just overwhelming. You say you see me on Facebook all the time. I mean, I was never allowed to be on Facebook. I love Facebook now. I mean, I'm on there 24/7. People are like, you don't sleep. But you want to talk about statistics? You know that Houston's the most violent city in the United States for domestic violence. The state of Texas is only second to California. Houston is #1 in the United States for domestic violence, violent acts. There's 150,000 a year in Texas, and over 50,000 of them are in Houston. So, I mean, there's a lot of violence here, but there's also a lot of pitfalls to the system. We get more funding than any other city in the state of Texas, but we have the least amount of resources. So, there's a lot to the system that's more than just, we receive no funding, and we do just well. I mean, but it's hard to do it at times. It's really hard to do it. It comes out of my pocket. It comes out of Teresa's pocket. It's hard. Where does the other $498 million go? I mean, it's a hard...
I was thinking about when you said stats, one of the most surprising stats that I heard was that it on average takes about 9 times for a female to leave the abuser. I was wondering, was that your experience? Did it take a while before you guys actually got to make the leap?
Yes. For myself, it was. It got to where I would say, I'm leaving. But it became a joke because I never did it. So he knew I wasn't going to leave. He knew I was going to stay. He knew he was in control of the situation when I kept saying, I'm going to leave and you're never going to see me again. And I was still there. And I was still there. So it became a joke. You know, to him, it's like, really? Whatever. That basically what it rolled down to, him saying, you're not going anywhere. And he joked about it. It became such a joke.
So why didn't you leave? What are the thoughts that go into? That's what we got to discuss, because, you know, false threats is like children. If you don't follow through with a threat, you know, they'll know that you'll never do it, and they'll keep doing it over and over again.
Right.
So what were some of the thoughts that go through the mind that says, okay, yes, I said I'm going to go, but I don't?
Fear is one.
Fear of what?
Fear of his actions. Fear of rejection from your family. I personally grew up in a very, very, very old school Mexican family where you marry and you stay there through thick and thin, no matter what. So that was a big thing. Fear was a big situation for me to stay there, not just from him, but for, you know, my family. The fear of rejection. I would say that would be the main reason for me that I stayed around. I didn't know where I was going to go. I didn't know what I was going to do. I didn't know what the outcome would be of me leaving, or what would be. And you hear all these horror stories on TV. You say that can happen because he's doing this. He's abusing alcohol. He's a gambler. He's abusing drugs. What's to say that he's not going to? And he did come with me to with a knife one day. I had a scar. You know, there was a lot of things that made me stay because I feared for not just for my life, but also for my son who was 6 when I left him.
You know, I have to commend over here Ms. Teresa Gutierrez for the lifelong commitment to all the women and men that have been abused. She does this out of the goodness of her heart. She doesn't get paid for what she does, and she's been doing it a long time. She has a full-time job, and then she has what I call the part-time job. That's really the full-time job. The part-time job doesn't pay. And she works with the women as well as children, I must say. And every year, I can't tell you how many times she's helped families during Christmas. They have what they call Adopt a Family. And I believe you had 50 families, 50 families last year. Let me tell you, for not having any money, but having the heart, ganas, she's done a lot for the community. And this is one of the few places that Latinas can go to because they're bilingual. You know, and so we're very proud of the work that you do, and I'm sure I'm speaking for them as well. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Ben. Thank you so
Thank you.
much.
Joe, you have a question for her?
Actually, we were talking about, you know, the different stages and what's some of the training,
I would like to comment on that, and it's more so because, yeah, it takes 6 to 8, 9 times for a woman to leave. They have to build their self-esteem. That is the little voice that you're looking for. That's what it starts with, building that self-esteem. After that, you've got to get past the judgmental of everybody else. Is my family going to judge me? Because in our Hispanic Mexican traditions, it's mi cruz. It is my cross, and I've got to, you know, your parents will tell you, you chose him, now you live with this.
Eres harina
You know.
de otro costal.
Yeah, that's what it is. And so the judgmental, you know, that you're going to get, and then where is the woman going to go? Is she going to go to a shelter? Some of the shelters, if you have a male child over 13 years old, you don't get accepted in a shelter. So, you know, where are you going to go? You have to have a plan. And if you don't work, who's going to take care of you and your children if you don't have any income coming in? So there's a number of things that I could tell you of reasons why they don't leave. And then, of course, the most dangerous time for a woman is when she has to tell her abuser that she's leaving, because that's where you run the risk of getting killed. That is the most dangerous time.
Let's talk about that, Rob. Have you had any cases where you actually triggered the escape, if you will, where you convinced someone to get out of the relationship and they left because of your conversation with them?
No, I haven't had to deal with that, but what I have had to deal with is one of the things that I have heard a lot is the motivator. What is the motivator for them to leave? And one of the things that I have heard quite a bit is that knowing that their children are witnessing the abuse is a huge motivator. So I think a lot of times that it can go either way. You know, we want to stay together because of the children, or we want to leave because of the children. But the main point right there is really to just keep in mind what it is that they're observing, because a lot of times they're just going to repeat those patterns.
You know, and sometimes as parents, we're so consumed with, I want my children to have both parents in the home, that we don't realize that instead of doing them a good, we're doing them a bad. My son was 6 when I finally said, I'm done. He said, Mommy, I love you, but not for anything else, but for leaving. Because they were seeing it. He remembers things now from the time that he was 2 years old that he shouldn't remember. That I thought he wasn't seeing, that I thought he was being, you know, in his room away from it, that he was seeing. He was experimenting this. He remembers things from when he was under a year old, hearing things. He goes, I remember this. When did this happen? And he'll ask me to this day. You know, he's very mature now. I think the situation made him mature very young. But he will ask me, and it hurts me because instead of doing him a good by staying there, dealing with it, I was doing him a harm. And now he tells me, he goes, that's the best thing. At 6 years of age, he told me, that's the best thing you could have done for me and Emily, which was, you know, his little sister. And he goes, I love you for it. And I think that's when I said, I've done the right thing in just leaving. We were sitting in the shelter in a bed when he told me this.
Lee, do you have kids?
Yeah.
Did you have kids with the person
No.
that was abusing you?
No.
Okay. So you didn't go through that situation.
No.
So what triggered you to live? Was there like a particular moment in time, or was it an action that transpired, or what did it?
Really, Teresa and Sylvia helped me a lot. I mean, that was the biggest thing is, like I said, Teresa just kind of had to grab me by the arm and just wake me up.
We're talking about this Teresa.
That Teresa.
Okay.
Yeah. It was just, you know, because there's always the, you know, I love you, come back, won't do it again. I went through a lot of financial, like, just, you know, just give me money, this and that. Still to this day, I get texts and stuff, and I'll call Teresa. It's funny now. It used to not be funny, but it was really just a big wake-up call with them, and just really having to just get your self-esteem. I mean, we focus on fear, hope, love, and hate. Why are you scared? What do you hope for? Why do you love that person? I mean, that's what I work on in my group. If you got to have hope, you got to get rid of the fear, you got to get away from it. So.
Well, we're going to take a little break here. We had one more host that was running late, so we're going to bring him on board.
Gee, I had an excuse.
Let's see if he does.
2 trains.
Well, you're watching Latino Talk TV. We'll be back in 2 minutes. Welcome back to Latino Talk TV. We have our third host here now. We're here, finally. I'll tell you what, that's traffic for you in Houston, Texas. When we have a 6 o'clock deadline when the show starts and you can't make it because you're stuck maybe waiting for a train or perhaps stuck on I-10 or 45. Thank you so much for coming, Greg.
Thanks for having me. I was like purposely.
Oh, yes.
I didn't want
yeah.
to do the current events because I didn't want to talk about how the president did on the debate.
Well, we're going to do it at the end of the show.
Oh, man.
Save us 10 minutes at the end.
Yeah, you know, I didn't want Carmona to have one up on me. I just come late.
Chris Carbona, call in a little bit, okay?
I'll tell you what, we have a very interesting topic today. As you know, is domestic violence, and we've heard some good stories. And we have, actually, Lee is a survivor, and Angie's a survivor. And so we had some great stories by them. Why don't you just recap on how is it that we can help men out there that are watching this show?
The biggest thing with men is just to be able to speak out and just really just dig in and just find that voice. A lot, you know, men go through financial abuse. It's a lot more emotional abuse with men. I mean, it's just easier to just push a button and ruin your day for the whole day than it is the physical. But, you know, we go through the physical too. Like I said, I'm blind in one eye from it. So
Is that abuse, or is that just kind of being a little bit weak-minded? I mean, with all due respect.
No, it's, you know, because you get, in the beginning, it's the little things. You know, let me see your phone. Who's that? Okay, no problem, this and that. Next thing you know, they're in your email. Mine went as far as to have Web Watcher on my computer, a spy program on my phone, a GPS unit on my car. She wanted to know every single move I made 24 hours a day, 24/7. A lot of those things I didn't even realize at the time. Wow. So it's a control, you know. But on the other hand, I was white trash, I was a piece of crap, I was everything else. Well, if I was so bad, why didn't you let me go? You know what I mean?
He's a white boy. What is he doing here?
I can speak Spanish, be careful. No.
Spanish. Very,
No
very
cuss words
good.
in English or Spanish.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, no
No,
cuss
and that's actually a good point because culturally, like last week we just had a show about being a machista, and man, we were the quietest we'd ever been, ever. You know, my wife was laughing at me when she watched the show, but you know that culturally being abused by another person, a female. I mean, that's just like totally taboo. You know, just like Greg said, and I would say too. It's like, what do you mean you're getting abused as a man? I mean, you should have, you know. grown
Lee,
some
was
cojones.
in your particular
Yeah,
circumstance, was it due to her infidelity?
You know, that's a funny subject you bring it up. I mean, I've went as far as I took 3 polygraphs while we were together. I mean, take a lie detector test, take the lie detector.
Because she wanted them.
Yeah, she wanted to prove me, but then when it would come back, I passed all of them, but then she didn't believe that person, or didn't believe this, didn't believe that. In the end, yeah, I mean, she was riding around with everybody and their brother. You know, so it doesn't matter. You know what I'm saying? But
Was she Latina or?
yeah,
Okay.
I'll never date another Spanish girl.
Take
You were
it easy.
traumatized,
See,
right?
that's what it is.
No.
But you know, can I make a comment on that? I mean, if you listen to what Lee has told us, he started off by saying he was in love, you know, and love is blind sometimes. And when you're in a relationship and your self-esteem isn't high to begin with, and you have this woman who, you know, is gorgeous, and you want to do whatever you can to hold on to the relationship. And then when you have, you're forgetting that you have an abuser that has a problem. You know, you know what the issues are that abusers have. So, you know, as he said earlier, if she could take more control of him, and he allows it because he doesn't want to lose her, which is just the turnaround of the women. It's the same thing. Their self-esteem, they're afraid, they don't want to lose the relationship, they want to continue. Except that for men, it's even harder because just like he came in here and said, well, was it this, was it this? How do you face a police officer when you're going to make that call and you're going to say, I got my butt kicked by a woman? You know, you're not going to make that call because, of course, they're going to judge you. You're a man.
But
How
and
could
a
you
prime
do that?
point with that is when I finally went to family violence with it, the only thing that saved me is that, you know, I saved the text messages, I had pictures, I had all these things. But on Valentine's Day of this year is when she took my eye out. And luckily enough, we're at a place where they had video surveillance, and a friend of mine that was a police officer was there. If I wouldn't have had all the documentation, everything I had, the first 2 times I went into family violence, it was a joke to them.
How did
Literally.
she take your eye out? Was it a
Ring on the hand.
Okay.
You know what, Lee?
Wow.
You're a brave man, because it takes a lot of courage. I think from a man's perspective, you think, oh, you know, it would be more of it. So really, it's the quite opposite. You're real brave. I take off my hat to you that you have the courage, especially to even sit here today and tell your story.
30 minutes before this, I wanted to run away. I'm not kidding. No, it's hard because I haven't really, and Teresa knows a lot more. There's a lot more to it. I haven't really come fully out with it, and it takes time. I mean, even though I help with the group and I do all these things, it's hard for everybody. Talk about the social media, you know, a lot of times I'll get a message on Facebook and I can already know, I can see where they're going, you know, and that's how I bring, you know, the guys into the group. Just, you know, I can understand or I can see what's going on, and then I just ask them just to come and check it out. Just come check it out, be a part of it. Just if you like it, it's great. And then boom, before you know it, they're going, and then the friend of them's going. You talk about Spanish community. I go to Mexico all the time. That's where I work, in Rio, Roma, those areas. I mean, I've started to talk to men over there, and that's total taboo over there, you know. But it's prominent. It's huge, you know. And you know, like I said, it's a lot more physical with women. It's a lot more emotional and financial with men. Mine, if you love me, you'd buy me a new car. If you love me, you'd buy me a new purse. I know more about shopping for women than most women do. I mean, it's, you know, it's really, it's just so quick. But you know, they use that. If you love me, you do this.
So how long has it been since you all separated?
March.
Okay,
Yeah.
so just recent.
Yeah.
And is she still trying to get back with you, or she's still trying to call you?
Not really, because there's, for just some legal reasons, I've ceased all the communication, whatever. I mean, I'll get a text once in a while or something, and it's pretty much pointed to money, or, you know, it's not because anything to do with a relationship or love. So.
So, you know, and we were talking about culture and the connections and all that. And there's a term in the Spanish-speaking world called a mandilon. You know, that's a man who's run by his woman. You know, and that's becoming a mandilon is very, very taboo. And if your family sees you or labels you that, it's like, man, what's wrong with you?
Mr. P in second word.
Is that what it is? You know, but sort of, you know, but if you really look at that situation, we go back to those same stages of control and everything else, right?
That's what it is.
If
I
a
had
man
about
does it-
6 other men that had come since I had been in La Rosa. 6 other men had come for that same reason. One man had been burned by the iron. As a matter of fact, at my job now, I had a man 3 weeks ago who was visiting for something else, and he was visiting the agent there, and he called me into his office because he had just gotten 8 stitches on his head because his wife couldn't find the keys, and he wasn't helping, and she came and hit him with her high heel shoe. 8 stitches got put on his head, and this was ongoing. He was taught to never hit her back. And I mean, there's a number of reasons that could be wrong with these women. It could be mental illness. You know, some women are bipolar. You know, and how do you're in a relationship with a woman and you love her, how do you going to handle her mental illness? Because now you're going to have to put her away. You know, so it could be a number of things.
Because there are dads, fathers that care about their kids, that care about raising their family, that want to live the example that they saw and maybe did or did not see in their own home. You know, so they come from a broken home. There's a lot of men who actually try even harder to become good fathers and not break up the family. When they see a situation that's, you know, falling apart, they'll do everything to keep saving it. So, I mean, is that kind of the situation? Because there are men, you know, when you, in my business, I deal with a lot of the financial situations where the husband, I've met fathers that are taking care of their 2 or 3 children by themselves. The wife is the one that left them, and they're the ones having to pay child support, if that. You know, so it's not just no longer just a woman who has the kids. There are men who keep the kids because the ex-wife is crazy.
And there's a number of men that won't even ask for child support because it's against our culture. Yeah. It's, you know, how am I going to go ask her for money? I can't ask her for money. I'd rather do without. But they don't see the principle of it. It's the children that need the money. And if she's able to pay money, and if it was turned around, they would have paid. So why not ask these women to pay? So it's all those signs are there. It's just that nobody is really looking at them. And now it's coming out more and more because these men are either getting killed or really physically getting injured.
You know, and I have to give credit that, you know, to me, I don't call myself a victim. I call myself, you know, a survivor. Victim is a wrong term because we're not victims. We are there because we want to be there. I made the decision to stay where I was at for as long as I did. I chose to put up with it. I could have walked away and I didn't do it. So I don't blame him. I blame myself for whatever happened. And we talked about it about 2 years ago. He did get help. He's an amazing person now. I have full respect for what he's come to be nowadays. He's a great father. We're working on, you know, a lot of things he's going through right now, but he's become a tolerable person. And, you know, but I told him, thank you. I said, I thank you for everything that I went through with you. He said, well, how can you thank me? I put you through this. I said, because of you, I am who I am today. I'm very independent. I am who I am. I'm a much better mother. And one day, if I do remarry, I'm not shutting myself out from the option. I do plan on hopefully finding somebody one day. I know I'll be a much better wife and a much better, you know, significant other. I've learned what hurting your significant other can do, so I would never hurt the person that I'm with.
You know, one of the things that you're saying that I like is that personal responsibility. You know, because you're saying you kept yourself in that situation. I think that can be a little confusing sometimes for women because they're not sure, you know, that with the fear what they're supposed to do. And it kind of reminds me of a couple when I was looking and the man was definitely the abuser in the relationship, and I was just thinking to myself, well, you know, he's kind of like the one has the more fault. And so I asked the woman, I was like, do you think that you have any part in the problems in the relationship? And she said, my only fault was not setting a boundary earlier. You know, and I think that that's something that whenever you are in love, that you have that emotional connection, that it's hard to do because like everything's going rosy, everything's going great. And a lot of times whenever they're like in between, like whether they should stay or not, there's that emotional connection and there's that logical part that says, I need to leave.
Right.
But that emotional connection is just can
So
be so
strong.
deep and so strong. And one of the things that I remember hearing was that a lot of times in these abusive relationships, 90% of the times are really good. And that's something that keeps them there too. So a lot of times, because you have just those moments, they'll be like, well, they're just like that sometimes. I'm sure they'll change.
Or when they're drinking.
Or
Yeah,
just when they're
just
drinking,
when they're-
exactly.
But they don't break away from it, you know, unless I think they finally make the change when they see they've lost everything that they have been working on and building on, which is their family. When they see that their kids don't want to come around them, when they see that the person that they were sharing a life with doesn't want to come around them, I think it's when it really hits them for the first time to say, wow, because they don't see it. At least with my ex-husband, he didn't see it. He did not see it until after it was too late. It was too late, and there's nothing. I would never get back with him. He has asked me, but there's no way I would get back with him. But yeah, you learn. It's like lessons learned. It's not about what happened. It's about what you make of them later in life. It took me a while to say it was my responsibility. It took me getting the right help, learning about myself, learning about what I had been through. My daughter is very independent. She's 6 years old. She doesn't take it. It's like, yes, yes. But, you know, but she has the heart to it to help others, because I put that in them. You know, you need to see with your friends, is she okay? You know, just keep your eye open on what's out there, because a lot of times we don't see it. Kids are the ones that are really speaking out without saying anything.
You know, when you were talking about, you know, sometimes the man has grown up in the abusive household and wants to change it, I think that I see two extremes. Either when they've grown up in an abusive relationship at home, they'll either repeat the pattern or they'll really want to go the other way and not want to repeat the pattern, which can have its consequences too,
Right.
because sometimes, because they've been in such an abusive family, the person that has left doesn't know how to really discipline the children, and they think that because they're being firm with them that they're being mean, and so the children will end up being not as well adjusted because they don't know how to be firm with them, and they've also let all those boundaries be crossed in the relationship, so the same thing happens with their children.
Well, it's so true. I mean, statistics show when you've had 4 children that have grown up in a domestic violence environment, 2 of those children are bound to be either abusers or let themselves be abused, because this is the environment that they grew up in. And that is the main thing about the education, not only from the man and the woman's side, is to stop the cycle, which is what Angie did. She stopped the cycle. She said, with my children, it's going to stop here. You know, I don't know if her husband came from a family of abuse, but she decided to stop the cycle here. And you know, the same thing with Lee. And that's what some people do not do. They say, we're going to stay here for the children and keep this family going. So we're going to continue the cycle.
Yeah.
That's what they don't see.
You know, and I don't think that there's anything wrong with saying, I want to stay here for the children, but you have to have the right mindset. You don't want to just stay there and keep living the hell that you're living in, but you want to stay there with the mindset of wanting to change to have a better family relationship, no?
Yes, that's
So,
definitely
you know, we're coming close to the end of the time. She's I'm a little tongue-tied because this is a very, you know, emotional subject too, right? But when we look at something like this, Kevin, leave me alone. Man. I have emotions too,
now and then.
once in a while.
Once in a
Wait
while.
till we start talking about Obama and Romney.
They're
No,
really
but-
good.
Don't threaten Big Bird.
Right. Come on, let's take Big Bird out. No, but in all seriousness, closing this section out, looking at what we just covered, you know, we're talking about coming from an abusive home, going to 2 extremes, being the abuser or finding an abuser. You become the other part of it, right? So yeah, I'll shut up now. No, but on the other part of it, once we find that help, right, we also look at ourselves and our children. And my phone just went off, sorry. What are the things that we need to work on to not help our children, to stop our children from repeating the cycle or over teaching them to another extreme? Because sometimes when you come from an abusive home, you do everything possible to teach your kids to never trust anybody or be independent. And that, that also can be damaging because they'll never have a close relationship because they'll all be in fear because I don't want to repeat what happened in the past. My mom went through it, I don't want to go through that too. Or my dad went through it, I don't want to go through that too. What kind of help is available for the next stage and what can we do?
I think two things to keep in mind is one, you can talk to your kids about what's appropriate and inappropriate, but more than anything, you need a model what's appropriate and inappropriate, because a lot of times when you get off of that abusive relationship, you'll tend to want to consciously or unconsciously look for another abuser. And so you have to be very conscious of what's going on and let your kids know this is what's appropriate, this is what's happened, and tell them, shape what it is that they need to know that's going to be more healthy for them in the long run.
Well, we've already elapsed our time here, but I did want to share some phone numbers. If you don't mind, share your number and you share your number. So we'll
Sure.
start off over here.
Sure, my number is 832-549-0082, and they can find more information at 3sessions.com. And in Spanish, I also have a Spanish website, 3sesiones.com.
And I could be reached at 832-274-4994. You could also get on our website, larosafamilyservices.org. And we'll be having an event about domestic violence on the 26th. It's an art show. It's a very graphic art show with pictures of domestic violence, but we're getting the point out there. So.
Where can we see those graphics? Is there a place? We couldn't do it today because of the.
I also do public speaking. I also do motivational speaking at different on my own. So if you guys 832-633-1303. I do go out to shelters and I do it free of charge.
Great. Okay. We'll be back in 2 minutes. You're watching Latino Talk TV. You're watching Latino Talk TV. Thank you for coming back and seeing us. We are going to talk about some current events. This is our favorite part of the show, by the way.
Especially since we were all late.
We usually do it at the beginning of the show, but we had to postpone it to the end of the show. But that's okay. You know, I was watching the news yesterday, and I'm sure you all heard about this. The HPD officer was sentenced to life in prison for raping that immigrant. Mm-hmm. And, you know, there's some more women that have come out that he also raped, supposedly. So it'll be a strong message to police officers, letting them know that this can happen to them as well.
Sure. I hadn't heard about that, but yeah, I mean, it's a great, I don't want to say it's a good example to set, but I guess it is a good example to set because you want to send the message that we're not going to tolerate this, and we want to put faith in those people that we have to protect us.
Well, it's not just the fact that he's an HPD officer. It should be for any rapist, any abuser, period. I mean, this should be the same case for everybody across the board, not just because he's a cop. You know, yes, he's an abuser. Yes, he happens to be a police officer, but I think the main thing is punishing the crime, not just because of the career he's in.
You know, when I heard it, I thought it was just going to the extremes. I said, oh my God, they're being so, going to the extreme. But if you think about it, the perception that people have of officers, they get away with murder. So I think it was good to set, that level and say, we're not going to put up with this, and anybody can get reprimanded seriously about it.
Well, then there was another case involving Harris County deputies. Mm-hmm. We had, I believe, 8 deputies that were going to be fired because they were having sex with inmates. And,
in the laundry room.
In the laundry room, of all places.
Yeah.
And what kind of message does that send? They're fired? Are they going to be, I'm assuming, arrested? I don't know. Is that the case?
Well, they're fired for now. The district attorney has to decide whether or not they're going to press charges. But in this situation, once again, you have people that are in control of a situation. They're responsible for the inmates. It's a very tough situation to be in. The contraband, the influence that's inside that environment. I applaud this sheriff for taking a swift action and doing what he's done. I know some of the union groups hate him because they're taking action like this, but he has to take action and get it done. What do you guys think?
Oh yeah, most definitely he did the right thing. Or else, then you would have to question the sheriff's credibility and integrity. So he did the right move.
So I got one for y'all. The Supreme Court's going to take on the University of Texas admissions case. Did y'all hear about that? A very, very smart, intelligent...
Reverse discrimination.
...young lady who happens to be Anglo is upset because she couldn't get into UT because she didn't qualify into one of the categories. So the Supreme Court is going to take it on. You know, it's basically challenging affirmative action for admissions. What do you guys think about that?
You know, for the longest time, it was hard for minorities to get into these Ivy League schools, if you will. And for us to go backwards, I don't think that's a good idea.
But why should smart, intelligent people be excluded from being able to get into UT just because they aren't minorities?
Apparently, she didn't meet certain scores. So if that was the case, I mean, what can she do?
She had a 3.59 GPA. I mean, why? Just because you happen to be a minority Latina, you should be ahead of the Anglo?
Well, I know that some colleges, they let the top 10% of their schools to be accepted automatically. I don't know what percentage, I don't know what her rank was or anything like that. But my perception, again, is that we cannot go backwards.
So
What are your
why not
thoughts?
expand admissions? Why do they have to limit the capacity? Why not look at growing the university? Why does it have to limit things?
Good question. I don't have an answer to that one. You're talking. You're
on a roll.
like I'm the president of the University of Texas.
Look at that, but we're not only punishing Anglo female intelligent person, we're also punishing the rest of the community who can't fit into the capacity.
You were with the president the other day
What
over there
president?
in San Antonio, president of the University of Texas. Why didn't you ask him?
You were closer to him. You're the one that has his cell phone number. I mean, come on now.
But you know, something that's happening, a lot of people don't take into effect, is the population. You know what I'm saying? I mean, your Hispanic population is how much more than it was 10 years ago. You know what I'm saying? And it's, you know, things are changing. So I agree with what you said. They need to expand and, you know, take that all into effect. I mean, it's your population is growing every day and get more students. It's all about money at the end of the day. You think they'd figure it out.
Right.
You know, I mean, it's...
But hey, our governor's freezing, trying to freeze tuition now after it got deregulated.
Well, before we run out of time, we have to talk about this.
Sarcastic
The
comment.
polls show that Obama and Romney are pretty much tight because of the debate.
Obama lost the debate.
According to most people that I talked to,
lost it.
Obama lost the debate.
I think he did.
But it'll be interesting to see what happens in the next couple of weeks. Remember, presidential elections November, so they only have 1 month, less than 1 month, to take action. What are your thoughts, Greg?
Well, the president could have very easily maybe lost the campaign due to his inability to. I mean, he got outmanned, he got outgunned, he forgot the rules of engagement, and Romney put him against the ropes and didn't stop swinging because he didn't want Obama to be saved by the bell. And it's unfortunate. I don't think the other two debates are going to really matter. That was so one-sided. I mean, the rules of engagement. You never let him see you weak, and he was passive. He was. It's unfortunate, but I mean, the proof is in the pudding. Very unfortunate.
You know, I purposefully watched the debate without watching any commentary outside of it. And I don't agree with the fact that Obama lost the debate. I think that I heard a lot more logic on Obama's part and a lot more of Mitt Romney trying to connect emotionally with the audience. And I think that that's probably why they say he won the debate. But I don't agree with the fact. I prefer, as a guy, as somebody that likes to look at specific answers, somebody that's going to give me more substance than just emotion.
Lee?
If I was the leader of the greatest country on earth, I would have came out with a lot more fight and a lot better answers.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, he did. I mean, ultimately, what happened is he didn't look like the president.
Exactly.
He, I mean, just the simple body language. He allowed himself to be led when he was doing this. He was. It was terrible.
He's usually a very dominant person.
Well,
that's
unfortunately, we ran out of time.
Well, one last thing, positive thing. They're going to honor Cesar Chavez. President Obama is going to honor Cesar Chavez. I think that's a wonderful thing. Finally, I think the man's done the history and the efforts. Just, I applaud him for doing that.
Well, with that, we are out of time. Thank you all for being our guest. And we hope to see you next week on Latino Talk TV, live TV, 6 p.m. every Monday. Thank you all so much for joining us.